Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so today, really what it is like a giant grammar review, and then we'll practice some of the English questions. Does that sound okay? Any questions? Okay, so first stuff is not too hard. So we have conjunctions and correlatives. So conjunctions connect words, phrases, or clauses. Only their function classifies them as conjunctions. So there's three types. We have coordinating, correlative, and subordinating. Coordinating conjunctions are what I feel like we usually think about conjunctions, the and, but, for, or, so, yet, and nor. Correlative conjunctions are kind of weird. They're used in pairs. They're like either or, neither nor, both and, whether or, not only, but also, the, as. And the first correlative appears in the first grammatical element, and the second correlative appears before the second element that is being connected. So whenever I think of conjunctions, I always think of that like conjunction, junction, what's your function? I don't know if they ever played that for you guys in school, like um, I forgot what they're called. There was also one about a bill, like I'm a bill. They have this cute little song for it. I wouldn't say this is necessarily too difficult or really that important to kind of know which one's the correlative and the adverbial are, as long as you know the coordinating, which are like the the most commonly used, and understand that there should be a comma before them. I think that's what you're mostly tested on. But regardless, let's look at some coordinating conjunctions. So we have and, which expresses relationships of or connects or addition. So Christopher wanted both the bicycle and the basketball, right? But introduces an idea contrary to expectations, indicates but does not stress the opposition. So I would like to go, but I have a previous engagement. For means because, seeing that, or since. So comfort Diana, for she is sad. Or denotes an alternative or a synonymous expression. Luke has acrophobia or fear of heights. So means in order that, with the purpose that. It is often followed by that. So talk louder so that all may hear. And yet means nevertheless or however. Gwen seems happy, yet she is troubled. Any questions on coordinating conjunctions or anything so far?
No, that all makes sense.
It's pretty easy stuff, but might as well learn all this stuff today, right? Or just go over it. So we have nor, which means and not, or not, likewise not either. And they always use nor to indicate continuing negation involving independent clauses. So Matt has no experience in chemistry, nor does this subject interest him. Okay, so those are coordinating. So we'll move to conjunctive. Adverbs. So accordingly means in fitting, in a proper way, corresponding, or consequently. Accordingly is used to show result. So Bob committed acts of heroism. Accordingly, he was given a silver star. Also means in addition, likewise to, besides. Also indicates the presence of something additional. It implies that the additional element or consideration is equal in weight to what precedes it. So being a lifeguard, I told myself, would be fun. Also, I need the money. So in addition. Besides means in addition as well, except for that mention. Moreover, furthermore, it indicates something additional to what has already been stated. It often suggests that the addition is an afterthought. The bill cannot be paid yet. Besides, the work is not completed. 1 second. Okay. Consequently means as a result, effect, or outcome. Therefore, it is used in introducing a statement resulting from or caused by what immediately precedes it. So there was an early frost. Consequently, the orange crop was poor. Okay. Furthermore means in addition, besides, moreover. Carol had many friends. Furthermore, she knew the mayor. However means nevertheless, yet in spite of all that, all the same. The concert is expensive. However, we will go. So I often see these used in the English section in a variety of ways. So one that I just came to mind is that the English section has a couple different ways to ask you questions. So there's one way where there's usually something underlined, and there's a B, C, and D, and there's nothing above it. They're not asking any question. And with that, you can just imply that you have to do the grammatically correct choice. But these conjunctions are often used in a manner where they ask you a question. So they won't necessarily say conjunction, but which word will fit best with the preceding sentence. So they'll give you options like therefore, also, because, or something like that, right? So depending on what the past sentence says and what this sentence says, it's important to know kind of their meaning to see which one you would use to connect. Sometimes they'd use like random things like nevertheless, like it means in spite of or however, yet they need something as because or before. So that's where I often see these conjunctions. Okay, I don't think it's worth really going over all these conjunctions, but they're in the back of your booklet. So if you ever need to like refer to them completely, you can, unless you have any questions specifically on any of these.
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be any benefit to read you all the definitions of these. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to relationships between and among clauses. So subordinating words that express time relationships after, since, when, whenever, as soon as, before, when, until, and while. So subordinating words that express contrast, though, whereas, although, and unlike. Subordinating words that express comparison, as though, as much, as if, as well as, and just as. And subordinating words that express addition or identification, that, which, who, where, who, and whose. Okay, so moving on to punctuation. There are usually about 10 questions on the ACT that are based on punctuation. So one form of punctuation is the comma. Personally, I was never very good at commas, and I've gotten better as the years went on. But when I was taking the ACT, commas were my like worst enemy. Like,
Yeah, I'm not very good at them either. Those and semicolons. Those are the two that I struggle with.
yeah, so I have a pretty cool trick for semicolons that we'll talk about when we get there. For me, commas were just like, okay, sometimes I would understand where they'd go, but there are other times when there was a bunch, it would just like throw me off. So I wouldn't know when I'd need them and when I wouldn't need them. So kind of the rule that I went by when I was taking the ACT was that usually if you don't know if you don't know off the top of your head where the commas go, there's usually options with like let's say A will have 4 commas, right? B will have like 2 commas, C will have 1 comma, and D will have no commas. I'd say about 8 to 9 out of 10 times, the one with the least amount of commas is the correct answer. So that's kind of what I started doing for a while until I started kind of seeing the trends. So we'll look over where these commas are supposed to go, because I think that will regardless be helpful. But the only time I don't see this rule working is whenever you have something of a sentence that doesn't necessarily matter, right? So we usually denote, like, let's say, Andrew, who takes my ACT class, woke up early this morning, right? Who takes my ACT class isn't important to the sentence. It's just describing who Andrew is. And that is usually separated by 2 commas. So the only time I've seen this rule kind of not work as well as it should have is when you have that right there, something that's not important to the sentence. And we can usually denote that it's not important, 1, by reading it, and 2, is I've noticed they usually only underline one of the 2 commas, right? So if they don't underline the comma, it means you don't have to change it. And that gives you a clue like, hey, maybe there's another comma needed, or maybe there's not, So just something to keep in mind while we go through these. Okay, so use a comma to set off introductory clauses or phrases, right? Use a comma in these examples. The beginning clause or phrases are introductory. So let's look at the correct one. So before he began preparing for the ACT, comma, Ed talked to his advisor. So regardless, this is just like an introductory clause, right? Ed talked to his advisor would be a complete sentence by itself, right? In the same sense that we use well. Well, comma, I guess there's no way to tell when we can go swimming. Well, again, is an introductory. So it would be okay for the sentence to not have it, but the fact that it's there means that we need to put a comma between the introductory clause and what continues it. Okay, these used the same way. So a comma is not required after a short introductory prepositional phrase if the meaning is clear. In September, I'll leave for college. I'll leave home for college. So these can be a little bit difficult. So we'll look at these examples a little bit closer. So do not use commas in these examples. The beginning clauses or phrases are not introductory. Ed talked to his advisor, comma, before he began preparing for the ACT. Ed talked to his advisor before he began preparing for the ACT. So Ed talked to his advisor, before he began preparing for the ACT, would be sort of grammatically correct, but it doesn't sound as good, right? And Ed talking to his advisor is a vital part of the sentence, because we know that he had to talk to his advisor before preparing for the ACT. Let's look at this one. Make a left on High Street to get to the high school. So make a left on High Street is an important part of the sentence that we can't really exclude. That's kind of how I denote my commas usually, is if it's an introductory one, is it needed for the sentence or is it not? And there's also really easy ones that will come up, like while or prepositional phrases, right? Okay. Use a comma before a conjunction that begins a clause. So we kind of went over conjunctions earlier. So, we have and, but, for, or, nor, either or, neither, nor, not only, but also. Right? And a clause is a part of a sentence that could be a sentence itself, right? So I was in school on time, but I was late for homeroom. Definitely there's a comma there, but if you see an and, but, for, or, nor, usually see if if it's a independent clause at the end, and if it is, then you need a comma before it. Okay. Use commas to set up parenthetical expressions. So this is the thing I was talking about earlier. So a parenthetical expression does not provide essential information and it interrupts the flow of a sentence. Use commas in these examples. So my brother wants to be a teacher. Who plays soccer is not a vital part of the sentence, so we denote it by commas, right? It's in the same way that we put like parentheses. Last summer, when I turned 16, I spent a month on the lake. Right, so last summer, when I turned 16, that to me sounds more like I would say it's a sort of essential in this case, but at the same time, last summer when I turned 16, I spent a month at the lake. If we had no commas in that sentence, we could see that something's wrong, right? We need either a conjunction or a comma separating it, because while we read it, we kind of go, last summer when I turned 16, I spent a month at the lake. So we take this small little pause. So we know that there's a comma required in this case. And since last summer when I turned 16, separates this to I spent a month at the lake. So I spent a month at the lake is an independent clause. So we know the comma would follow last summer when I turned 16. Okay. Do not use commas in these examples. So the girls who play soccer will miss the last class. So the girls who play soccer will miss the last class. So who plays soccer is an essential information, right? In this case, my brother who loves to play soccer wants to be a teacher. He loves to play soccer, but it's not really related to the sentence. Him loving or hating soccer doesn't determine anything about his want to be a teacher. Everyone who takes the ACT should read this book. So the words who takes the ACT provide essential information because it's telling us that, hey, this book is definitely helpful for the ACT, so everyone should read it. Okay, the next one is one we kind of usually know. It's to use a comma to separate items in a list. So the plane entered a long, slow spiral. So long, comma, slow spiral. Pat like warm, soft, breezy nights. Pat like warm, comma, soft, comma, breezy nights. So Ed like his eggs poached, but his toast buttered and his coffee black. So Ed liked his eggs poached, comma, his toast buttered, comma, and his coffee black. We can usually recognize a list pretty easily. I feel like we've all been programmed to do so. in a grammar sense. Because they really stressed putting commas in lists, I feel like, growing up.
Yeah, they did.
So those aren't too bad. Do not use a comma in this example. Ralph drove to the ACT test site in a bright red convertible. In a bright, comma, red convertible. So bright and red are just adjectives to the convertible, but they're not necessarily a list, right? Okay, so next we move on to semicolons. So the trick about semicolons to me is that they're used to connect, like they can tell you, like used to connect an independent clause when the independent clauses are not connected by a conjunction. For me, wherever you can put a period, you can put a semicolon. That's the rule that's always been in my head. So like if I can put a period here, I could also put a semicolon. Here's a nice trick about this, right? If I have an A, B, C, D, and let's say I have like I, semicolon, me, let's just say like this is a sentence or some sort of noun is here and I doesn't really fit. And then some other sort of noun here. But the semicolon, there's an option with a semicolon separating the two same words. And then let's say in C, there's an option with a period separating the two same words. I know that neither of these options can be correct. Why? Because they kind of mean the same thing, right? You could separate a semicolon or a period in the same way. So I can easily eliminate those two and just look at the other two. So let's look at some of these examples. The students entered the room. So that's a complete sentence by itself. The ACT booklets were handed out. That's also a complete sentence by itself. Usually when they do use a semicolon, the sentences are related in some way, right? They're connected. Like the bird soared, the fish swam. So we're talking about animals doing something. The students entered the room, the ACT booklets were handed out. So that reminds us like, oh, okay, we're talking about something ACT related, okay? In this case, we have a conjunction, so we can clearly tell that a semicolon would not fit. We'd need a comma. Before he went home is kind of those introductory phrases that we talked about. So we'd also need a comma, not a semicolon. But in these cases, if we were to put the bird soared, period, the fish swam, perfectly okay. The students entered the room, period, the ACT booklets were handed out, perfectly okay. So that's kind of the rule that I've always followed. Semicolon and period go hand in hand. Okay, so we want to colons. So colons aren't necessarily too bad. There's a couple uses for them, and you do see them. I say at least like 2 or 3 questions on every ACT English that are based on colons. So you can place a colon after an independent clause to introduce a list or illustration. So you have to have a complete sentence in order to use the semicolon. So bring these items to the ACT, period. That would be an independent clause. So an admissions ticket, pencils, erasers, and a watch. Here's another one. There's only one necessary personal trait, perseverance. There is only necessary. Okay, they have a typo here. Kind of bothers me. But there is only one necessary personal trait, and perseverance, right? So that one's not too bad. Do not use a colon in these examples. You should bring is not a complete thought, so you can't really use it there. So that's kind of where we introduce the comma to separate the list scenario. It's also sort of, to me, it's always a little bit more clear when the colons are in a list, because they have a list and they have the option of a colon. And you kind of see if it fits with the independent clause or not. But what confuses me a little bit more about colons is their second use. And they didn't introduce it. Okay, so sometimes they'll use the colon in the case of like describing like the sentence before. And I'm gonna write it out here to kind of help you see what I'm talking about. So the jury decided on a verdict. Right. So in this case, we see that the jury's verdict was guilty, but we're not really introducing a list of any sorts or of any sorts, right? We're saying the jury decided on a verdict, and that's a complete thought, and we're stating what the verdict is. So like defining kind of like a definition based. A lot of times you'll see like like this word meant excited, and you could put like colon, joy, stuff like that. So it's more like descriptive of what the sentence is saying. You'll see some of those every once in a while. Okay, let's move on to parentheses. So use parentheses to set up explanations or definitions, as in these examples. The atmosphere on Venus, the planet is not habitable, is not like the atmosphere here on Earth. So the planet is not habitable. We set off either an explanation or a definition. There is a paucity or scarcity. That's a definition of information about the most distant parts of the galaxy. So the word scarcity defines paucity. And then the words the planet is not habitable explain something about Venus. Okay, so this is an interesting point that way, right? Because we usually use commas or these things, right, to take away parts of a sentence that are not necessary. So these are just like commas, but they're only used in two cases. I only see them like in the case to denote things that are necessary, or maybe at the end to introduce like a final remark or something of that sort. In this case, parentheses are only used if they either have a definition of the word preceding it or something preceding it, or an explanation. So it's an important distinction to remember. A lot of times they won't necessarily trick you up and put commas, separating commas and separating parentheses, but just in case that they do, I think that would be an important distinction. Okay, so an apostrophe indicates a missing letter or letters in contraction. So I'm sure you know contractions: won't, don't, isn't, let's, it's. So it's saying will not, do not, is not, let's, let us, it is. The spelling it's is correct for the possessive personal noun. Okay, so that's an interesting remark. So we have it's is a correct for the possessive personal pronoun. So possessive personal of it is its, right? And if it's it, comma, s, always read it out as it is, right? Okay, use an apostrophe and the letter s after a singular noun to form the possessive unless the apostrophe s makes pronunciation too cumbersome. So Ben's father, Carl's cat, Louisa's car, Moses' sister, they're all just possessive, right? We're just talking about Ben's father, Carl's cat, Louisa's car, Mo's sister. Okay, use an apostrophe after a regular plural noun to form the possessive. So animals, rights. So in this case, we have plural animals, right? So we'd write, if we're talking about like all the animals at the zoo, we'd say animals. And in order to show possessiveness, instead of putting the apostrophe here, we put it at the end. So that indicates that it's a plural possessive. Okay, use an apostrophe to form the possessive of indefinite pronouns, but not personal pronouns. So everyone's shoes, anyone's guess, its history, her shoes. Hers does not make sense, right? So her shoes, if not, there'd be, yeah, her shoes. I've never seen hers used like this, but we usually denote to just saying this instead of hers in our head. Okay. Period, question mark, and exclamation point. Period is the end of a normal sentence. Question mark is when you're asking a question, and exclamation point is to show like either a command or like excitement. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, quotation marks. I don't see these too often. There might be one question every once in a while, but they're definitely like in the readings. But place a double quotation marks around direct quotations. Place single quotation marks around quotations between quotations. Indirect quotations describe what has been said, but not the speaker's exact words. Do not place quotation marks around the indirect quotations. The teacher turned to the class and said, "Let's talk about quotation marks." Okay, so enclosed direct quotes and quotation marks. Um, so when I think about a history, the teacher said, Lincoln's words 7 years ago always come to mind. When I think about history, the teacher said, Lincoln's words 7 years ago always come to mind. Also, I don't think this is very high yield, but if you're using quotation marks and you have like quotation mark inception, right? So you have one quotation mark and then you have to put another one in. That's when you use one. And you place periods and commas following a quotation inside the quotation marks. So that's pretty important. I feel like we often put it at the end or after the quotation marks or question marks. Again, semicolons and colons are outside the quotation marks. I wouldn't say worry too much about this one because they'll usually just do it for you in the options because that's pretty, I feel like that'd be hard to like remember while taking the exam. Just remember periods and commas go inside the quotation marks. And I feel like they'll always put semicolons and colons outside. I've never seen a question where they give you an option between a semicolon inside the quotation marks or outside. Okay, so this is just an example of utilizing these. I feel like quotation marks aren't too bad. Okay, this is just a list of words in case you want to look at it. You get the simple present, simple past, past participle. So arise, arose, arisen, awake, awoke, awoken, be, was, were, been. Those are too important. Okay. Sequence of tenses. So this handout explains and describes the sequence of verb tenses in English. So simple present, they walked, they walk. Present perfect, they have walked. Simple past, they walked. Past perfect, they had walked. Future, they will walk. Future perfect, they will have walked. So I don't think knowing exactly what they are will be incredibly beneficial for this exam. I can't tell you that I can look at something and say, okay, that's future perfect tense. But at the same time, it will make sense depending on the sentence, right? So that's kind of one of those things where you read the sentence and you'll say, okay, this one sounds more correct than the other options. So let's quickly go over kind of what they're about. So present perfect. The present perfect consists of a past participle, the third principal part with has or have. It designates action which began in the past, but which continues into the present, or the effect of which still continues. So Betty taught for 10 years, simple past. Okay, past perfect, future perfect. So let's just look at this review. I don't think it's worth really understanding specifically what past perfect, future perfect, and all of them are. So Judy saved $30. So we know that's past because it's got a D, ED. Judy will save $30. We know that's future because it has will save. Judy has saved $30. That's present perfect because of the has. Past perfect uses had. Future perfect will have. And there can only be one would have action in a group sentence. Okay, so we know singular and plural nouns. Just adding an S. If it ends with Y, drop the Y and add IES. So instead of mystery, you can say mysteries. Add ES to singular nouns ending in S, SH, CH, X, or Z. I feel like, are you good with singular and plural nouns? You think we need to go too deep into that?
No, that's really easy.
Mm-hmm. What about past perfect and Matt? Do you want to review this a little bit more, or does this all kind of make sense?
Makes sense too, to be honest.
Yeah, like I was saying, they'll never ask you like, is this a simple present, present perfect, or simple past? You know? So as long as you can understand which ones are present, which ones are past, and reading the sentence will kind of give you a hint of which one will fit in there too.
I got you.
So a pronoun most clearly refers to its antecedent. So Andy wanted Nathan to use his car. So his is Andy's car. right? Andy wanted Nathan to use his own car, or Andy wanted Nathan to use Andy's car. They all mean the same thing. Case pronouns can be in the subjective, objective, or possessive case. Look at these examples. Subjective pronouns are used as the subject of a sentence or a clause, or refer to the subject. Like, who is supposed to take the garbage out today? Lynn's announced it was she. Okay. That doesn't sound right to me. Liz announced it was her. That's an interesting. What do you think about this? Do you think this is another typo? Or does this make sense to you?
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I would say Liz announced it was her.
Yeah. She is not. Yeah, that has to be a typo.
Yeah.
Like Jim decided to help her makes sense, but not Lisa announced it was she.
Yeah, Jim decided to help she. Yeah. Objective pronouns are the object of a verb or preposition. So in this case, we have object. In this case, we have subject. Possessive pronouns show possession. So there, my, that. Yeah, there and my are pretty good ones. Okay. Singular and plural pronouns. Those aren't too complicated. They give us a list. So, singular, I, me, my, mine. We, you, they, us, you, them, whom, ours, yours, theirs, whose. Indefinite pronouns shown below are always singular. So anyone, each, either, anybody, everybody, everyone, no one, somebody. Gender. A singular pronoun referring to a third person may be masculine, feminine, or neuter. All other pronouns, including plural pronouns, are neutral. Okay, let's talk about agreement. So each pronoun must agree in number and gender with the noun phrase, or pronoun it refers to. So let's look at a non-agreement in number. Joanne and her sister ran to catch the plane, but she was late. So we're talking about Joanne and her sister. So we can't use a singular pronoun like she or her. We have to talk about them combined. So they. Non-agreement in number. Everyone went home to get their raincoats. Everyone is singular. So we have to use went home to get her or his raincoat, his or her raincoat. So these always trick me up. But it's not often that we see them, right? So just remember anyone, everyone, each, either, anybody, everybody, no one, somebody. They're all supposed to be singular. So that's why we use his or her. What usually will come up is everyone. I'd say that's the most commonly one. They'll give you the his or her option. Okay. The girls took their cars to get her brakes fixed. So it's brakes fixed because we're talking about the car, not the girls. And the man on the platform waited for the woman to get off the train, which he had been on for 3 hours. So the man on the platform was waiting for the woman, but we're talking about the woman in the sentence. So he wouldn't fit. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so we have verbs. So every predicate contains a verb. The main verb is underlined in each predicate below. So the predicate is kind of just the part that talks about the action. So ran quickly down the path. Ran can be a verb. We have action verbs and linking verbs. So action verbs describe an action. And the most common linking verbs are am, are, is, was, and were. So action verbs are what we usually think of, like Andrew ran, I jumped. Singular verbs and plural verbs goes in the same way, but it's kind of backwards. Most singular third person verbs end in S, but most plural verbs do not. So like Andrew runs, we run. She says, we say. They, or he helps, they help. So it's kind of backwards. I feel like we do this in our mind without even knowing that rule. I didn't realize that the verbs drop the S, or I didn't remember at least, and that nouns added the S. but I think it's pretty interesting. So am or is are, and was were. Okay, and we also have the verb tense. So it tells us if it was past, present, or future. So they'll never test you on the names of verbs, but rather whether you use the verbs correctly. Okay, so we have present tense. So use the present tense of a verb to refer to something that is occurring now, that is generally always true or always occurs. So drop the car keys. The wind is blowing. These trees lose their leaves, right? John stands. Present participle. He is standing still. We also have the past tense. So something that occurred in the past. So often we add ed, like you dropped the car keys. Instead of blow, we might change it to e. So the wind blew, the trees lost, I lose, lost, lose. She spoke, I speak. So not too bad. So to form them, you usually add d, t, or ed. I rent, I rented, I have rented, I do, I did, I have done. In future tense, use the future tense to refer to something that will occur in the future. To form the future tense, use the words shall or will before the present tense form of the verb. So anytime you see will or shall, it's usually telling us about the future tense. Okay. Let's see how much we have left. Tense shift. So verbs in a sentence should reflect time sequence. If events represented by the verbs occurred at that time, the verbs should have the same tense. So let's look at some examples. The rain splattered on the windshield as I drove to the store. So they use the past verb, so that it should continue with the past verb. They use a present verb to continue with the present verb. They use a future verb, it should continue with a future verb. So they'll definitely ask some of these. These are pretty often used, right? They'll change the verb form in some way. And you have to continue using the one that they used previously. So some tense shifts are acceptable. So mixing tenses is acceptable when the verbs present events that happen at different times. So John will march in the parade tomorrow. So she is practicing now. So Ben is fixing the vase he broke last week. And the key here is to avoid faulty tense shifts. So a faulty shift between present tense and past tense is a common error. So she ran home and ate dinner. You can already tell that's wrong, right? She ate dinner. She ran home and ate dinner. Dave saves money for the game. He saved money for souvenirs. So he saves because he's doing the same. Saving for the game and he saves for souvenirs, or we could use them all, both in the past, right? Dave saved money for the game and saved money for souvenirs. Just as Pam was past putting away her book bag, or Doug runs, again, we have a past and a present. So we can either have two pasts or two presents. Okay. Subject verb agreement. I'd say this is one, if not the highest yield thing that you'll see. So this, a lot of questions will come from this. So let's look at this one. So the subject and the verb have to agree in number. Singular verbs take singular verbs, or singular subjects take singular verbs. Plural subjects take plural verbs. So the key here, I would say, is not as much understanding that singular verbs take singular, or singular subjects take singular verbs, and that plural subjects take plural verbs, but really seeing what the subject is that the verb is describing. I think that's where a lot of mistakes come. What they'll usually do is they'll give you like a sentence like, Andrew you play any sports, Andrew?
Football.
Okay, so football, right? So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll introduce something like this in between, from my ACT class, and that will confuse our is. Maybe that wasn't the best explanatory sentence, but they'll do something where they put something in here, opposite subject verb agreement. So Andrew might be singular, and this might be plural, and that's when it'll kind of throw you off on choosing which one. But figuring out that the subject in question is what the verb is referring to, or what subject in question is what the verb is referring to, will really point to if you need to have it in plural or singular form. Okay, so let's look at just like the bottom two. So Bob and Lisa and Liz referees the game. So they referee, right? Because it's plural. Everyone are at the door. Everyone is at the door. So everyone is a case where it's always going to be a singular, non-plural. Even though it is plural, because we're talking about everyone, it's one of those that will always be singular. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Locate the subject and verb. The subject and verb may come anywhere in a sentence. Say the subject and verb to yourself. If it sounds right, it's probably right. Okay, so find the subject and verb. Okay, so let's think about this. The ACT practice test, which Liz took on Saturday, prepared her for the actual test. So what was the subject here of this first sentence? And what was the verb?
Is it the ACT practice test?
Yeah, so again, this is separated by commas, so we can say that it's non-relevant. So I immediately just take that off. Once we take that off, comes easy, right? ACT practice test is the subject. So what is the verb?
Prepared.
Great job. So that was kind of what I was talking about, where they give you that sentence in between the subject and the verb so that it throws you off on choosing the correct one. Okay. Well, let's do the second one. The person with the highest test scores wins an award. So what's the subject here on number 2?
The person.
Yeah, person is subject. So what's the verb that describes it?
Highest.
So highest describes the test scores. I'd say it's wins, right? So that's what you're doing. So you're winning. How would this change if I change this to the people? The people with the highest test scores. How would this verb change?
Like, what do you mean? Like, wins?
So yeah, so the verb wins. How will that change if we were to change this to people?
Wouldn't it just be win an award?
Yeah, exactly. So just drop the S. It's backwards. Okay. Let's look at parallel form. So parallel form places sentence elements in the same or similar form to emphasize the equal importance of the elements. These sentences are in parallel forms. I like to drive my car and to ride my bike. I like driving my car and riding my bike. So whenever you have a sentence in a certain specific way, I'll try to keep it that way. So I encountered a question the other day that was something like, it was a list of things and it was that they learned. So it was like the barbershop learned how to cut hair, and then they would use a semicolon, and then I don't remember the sentence specifically, but basically the sentence before, so it was a big sentence and only like half of the list was underlined, right? But the other half was not. And the form that they had in the other half is they had 2 ways of separating things. So it was like a list, and it was like, at the grocery store, I got vegetables, and it was like, or this fruits, I don't know how they did it. I can't think of a good example. But basically, what they were doing was that in the part that was an underline, they would separate like new things with semicolons and things that belong into that category with commas. So it was like they learned how to cut. I think it was some sort of had something to do with a barber of some sort. But they learned how to cut different types of hair, comma frizzy, comma curly, and then like semicolon, shave beards, semicolon, use shampoos, comma conditioner, comma like face wash. You know what I'm saying? So they kept that order of like semicolon separating complete like new things and commas separating the things in between themselves. So always look at the parallel form of things. I think because that was the only way I knew how to answer that question, because I was like, what the heck is a semicolon doing in between the sentence? Like, that makes no sense. And then I looked back and I was like, oh, okay, the part that isn't underlined is also using the semicolon. So I just used the same like formula to answer that question. So parallel forms were important. Parallel forms when phrases or clauses in a sentences are linked by coordinating conjunctions. The coordinating conjunctions include and, but, nor, or and yet. So shopping means walking in a mall and finding bargains, right? So walking, finding. The teacher always threatens a detention, yet never gives a detention. Threatens, never gives. Have you decided if you're going skiing or going skating? So both in the past, right? Phrases and clauses linked by conjunctive pairs. Use parallel form when the phrases and clauses in the sentences are linked by conjunctive pairs. The conjunctive pairs include either or, neither nor, and not only but also. So let's look at what they give us. Neither local streets nor the highway seem the best way to get there. So local streets nor the highway. Okay. She was not only an A student, but also a very responsible person. So kind of keeping the same form. Sentence elements compared to parts of the list. So Gail would rather be a waitress in Colorado than a lawyer in a big city. The dog preferred the liver snaps to the beef snaps. And the mathematic tests included arithmetic, algebra, and geometry. They're all positive. So do not use parallel forms when one of the clauses or phrases is subordinate. Subordinated means that a sentence element is of lesser importance than other sentence elements. The absence of parallel form emphasizes that one sentence element is subordinate to another sentence element. So the words although, because, if, then, when, where, while, which, that, and who signal subordinate elements. So let's look at some examples of that. I guess it just threw us through adjectives. Okay. So these are the last 2 pages. Then we'll take a quick little break of like 10 minutes or so, because I know it's early and a weekend, and then we'll do some practice questions. So let's look at adjectives. So adjectives are used to modify nouns and pronouns. So you should know adjectives. Could you name like 1 or 2 adjectives for me? Or use an adjective in a sentence?
Blank.
I think I kind of put you on the spot.
Like heavy or like smooth or something like that.
Yeah, so like the big red car, right? Big and red describe the car, so they're adjectives. So adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. So what I always think of adjective or adverbs, the first thing that comes to mind is they end in ly. Not all adverbs end in ly, but like most of them do. So the hikers stepped carefully, swimmers stepped gingerly. If they modify adjectives, it was exceptionally sunny. It was a very dark night. So in this case, very is describing the dark. So you can quickly pick out which ones are the adverbs, right? But most of the time, I'll say the end in ly. That's kind of how I always remember adverbs. The driver arrived just in time. The sun set. Unfortunately, the rain did not follow. Regrettably, the teacher is absent today. So common adjectives and adverbs to avoid. So John traveled the course slow. So in this case, what is slow referring to? or what is slow?
Traveled. Wait, like the course you traveled.
Yeah, exactly. So traveled, since it's a verb, it has to end in a Y. So slowly. Chris walked up to the path quickly, right? So walked quickly. Aaron's saying really well. So really is describing well, which is also an adjective. Ryan was surely playing less than his best. Surely is describing the playing. Bob wanted to perform the dance well. Uh, Will describes the dance, so it's an adjective. And Liz cooked badly. Badly describes her cooking. Okay, we have comparative and superlative, adjectives and adverbs. So adjectives and adverbs show comparisons. Use the comparative form to compare two items. Use the superlative form to compare more than two items. So the comparative, the ending er, and the words more and less signal the comparative form. So the comparative form includes words and phrases such as warmer, colder, safer, higher, less industrious, and more creative. So if it ends in er and more or less. So Frank is least creative than this. Frank is less creative than this. So less is describing the creative. Frank, Alaska is colder than Florida. Ben is prouder than Larry. Ray is happier than Jim and is more capable than Amelia, right? So the verb in these is creative, than, is, and is, right? So superlative form, so it compares more than two items. Use a superlative form, and the ending is est or most and least. Superlative form includes words and phrases such as happiest, youngest, oldest, highest, least tired, and most interesting. Funnier and funniest, that's kind of what I think of, right? So you have something that's funny, funnier, funniest. So Anne has the most experience of any pilot flying to Europe. So you can't say Anne has the more experience, right? Julia was the youngest student to enter the creative writing contest. Nathan was the most energetic student in kindergarten. And Andy received the highest score on the law exam. So idioms do not follow the rules of standard English usage, but idioms effectively convey a complete thought. Incorrect idioms in the ACT usually use the incorrect preposition. Given below are examples of incorrect and correct idioms. So angry with him, not angry in him. Detach from my parents, differ with your view, differ from your appearance, in accordance with the rules and independent of your effort. Okay, so that just continues. Okay, before we finish, I want to cover a rule that they didn't mention. So often they'll ask you if you should use who or whom. And to me, that one was also very, very confusing. Do you know when, like, the difference between who and whom?
No.
Okay, so the thing that I always did is if it's who, you can substitute his or her. Wait, him or no, her. Wait, give me a second. Give me a second. I don't want to mess up the rule. So who and whom. So whom is him or her. And who is he or she. So whenever you use who, you can just substitute it with either he or she, and it should make sense. Whenever you're supposed to use whom, you're supposed to substitute it with him or her, and it should work. That's kind of how I always went about it. Okay. Any questions about any of these grammar rules that we covered?
I don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, awesome. So if you want to take like a 10-minute break, feedback at 10:11, and then we will start doing some ACT English. Does that sound good?
Sir.
See you in about 10 minutes. Okay. So you should have a 71H ACT form. That's on.
It's right here.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Um, so what we're gonna do now is we went over pretty much all the rules that could go in the English test. So let's kind of go over how you're doing. So are you planned for an ACT coming up? Um,
I'm gonna take the one for school in April,
okay,
and then I'm gonna retake the SAT.
the SAT. Okay, so you've never taken the ACT before.
I have taken the ACT. I got a 21 on the ACT, then I got a 1190 on the SAT, which is
Okay.
like 24.
And how did you do section wise? Like, what was your best section? What was your worst section?
My best section was reading. My worst section was math.
Okay. Um, so we can finish some of this today. I want to work on some math with you. Um, but today was really a grammar heavy day. That's kind of what they had on the schedule. So we'll work through some of this since we still got some time, and maybe just do like 10 or 15 math problems together. That way we get some help on that. Um, okay, so what we'll do is I'm going to kind of throw you to the wolves, and then we'll talk about the questions to the answers in this passage, and see how you do and kind of where you're struggling. Um, and then depending on that, we'll see how we do passage two. But like I said, the English section, this one's not that or difficult in my opinion. There's a lot of questions, but most of them are pretty straightforward. Don't take too much time. There's usually anywhere between 5 to 6 passages. In this case, we have, yeah, exactly 5 and 45 minutes. So you have about 9 minutes per passage, which is pretty good timing. So what we'll do is I'll set a timer for about 9 minutes, and then you will complete passage one. Whenever the timer, I'll give you a heads up at like 3 minutes, 1 minute, etc. Whenever the timer goes off, if you need a little more time, you can take a couple more minutes. I'm just seeing how you do time wise, and then we'll look at your accuracy after you finish this passage. Does that sound okay? Any questions?
That sounds good.
Okay, so you have 9 minutes, and you can get started now. You have about 5 minutes left. You have 1 minute left.
Okay, I'm done.
Awesome. Great job. You had about like 30 seconds left. That's pretty good timing. Okay. Do you want to go over? So tell me, what did you get for number one?
I got B.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. See, that's where the rule applies. I was telling you about. Turtle has been classified as Hawaii's green sea turtle, so that's important, right? We talked about introductory phrases that are important. Has been classified as an endangered species for over 25 years. Okay. What about number two?
I put no change.
Yep. Awesome. Again, this is describing signs, right? Signs is plural, so Warren has to be singular. Okay. What about, give me a second, let me pull up just a little bit.
I put C for 3.
Okay, let's look at 3 together then. So my friends and me, however, so ignore the signs, wade in the water and struggling to flip around 150-pound turtle into its back in the center of an oversized canoe. Okay, so what did you cross out, or what was your thought process when answering 3?
Well, me didn't sound right, so I thought it would be I.
Yeah, so definitely, great job. So that takes away A and D. So why did you choose C over B?
I don't know, but I forgot. Isn't the I comma then however comma?
Yeah, so that's B.
Yeah, that,
So the right answer in this case was B.
yeah.
Okay, so you saw your mistake, right? Pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was good though. Yeah, the key there for me was definitely, like you said, that was really good to knock out A and D because you knew it was I, and then doing that really helps out, you know. So always knock out question or answer choices when you can. Okay. What about number 4? What are your thoughts on 4?
Struggling didn't sound right, so I put J and I put struggle.
Yeah, great job. The struggle and the struggle to flip. Yeah, it was struggle because it was a verb, right? Okay. What about number 5? What do you think?
I
Of that?
put perform the exam
Perform. Great job.
to see.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about number 6. What are your thoughts on number 6?
I put G, explain to project people who have gathered nearby.
Yeah. So this is what I was telling you about earlier about how there's 2 types of questions, right? We have these that are kind of just straight up grammar, and these that like ask you something specifically. So in this case, it was given that all the choices are true, which one would most effectively provide a transition into the next sentence? And you got that one right, which is a great job. Okay. What about number 7?
I put A, totally,
Okay. And why did you put totally?
because all the other ones are like questions, like he may or may not. That one is exact. That it definitely totally is that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's great job. Okay. What about number 8?
I put J because it's a specific detail to clarify why the migration would be remarkable.
Yeah. Awesome. What about number 9?
I put no change. I thought like the turtles, like since it's singular, it's just his.
Turtle singular, possessive. So hey, no change, turtle's mouth. Okay. What about number 10?
I put wrinkle my nose. So G.
Yeah, great job. Okay. What about number 11?
So for this one, you talked about how there's like a semicolon and a period that like
Yeah,
either of those would work. So the only one left would have been C.
great job. See how that works really nicely?
Yeah.
Okay. What about number 12?
I put in order to watch because you put all this stuff on to watch it happen.
Yeah, awesome. And number 13?
I put B, sluggish and cumbersome.
Mhm. You're killing this passage, honestly. What about 14?
I followed.
Okay, so let's look at this one. So, kicking my fins, I follow the turtle as it beats its flippers. So, kicking is already in the present, right? Because you're kicking your fins. I didn't kicked my fins. So, for that reason, it would be present, right? So, we can take out I followed the turtle as it beats the flippers. Kicking my fins, if I follow, doesn't make sense. And were I to follow is also too many words for what you're trying to say. So 14 was actually F, no change.
There.
Okay. And what about 15?
I put D because I don't know. That one felt like it wrapped up it the best.
Okay. Let's see this one. Given all the choices are true, which one most effectively completes the sentence and the essay by maintaining the focus on the turtle? Right. So the key here is that it not only has to complete the sentence, but has to maintain the focus on the turtle, right? If I dream of being a marine biologist who spends lifetime making the ocean a better place, focus is not on the turtle. If I swim further into the ocean, when we both surface, my friends are distant figures on the sand. So it's talking about his friends. I am soon left behind, and I look forward to returning to the sunny Hawaiian Saturday. So the key here was to think about what the focus was, which one maintained the focus on the turtle. So the only one that does that, it beats its flippers like wings and soars through the canyon reefs towards the deep water beyond, was actually A. No change.
Okay. I thought I was trying to like wrap up like the whole essay.
Yeah, so you have to really pay attention to what they're specifically asking you to do. So not only are they asking you to wrap up the essay, but they usually include one part that is like the determinant, you know, of what they want. But overall, I think you did really good. I really like that you were able to apply a bunch of the things that we went over, which is smart. Um, how did you do on your English section? Do you remember your sub score?
On my SAT, I think I got a 650, 750, something like that. I can't find it.
No, it's okay.
It was above average.
Okay. That's fair. So you're honestly looking pretty good. If you were to miss 3 questions on every passage, you'd be around like the 28, 27 to 30 range, depending on the test, which is really nice. So that's a great job. Okay. So
The big problem I have is math because I missed geometry my sophomore year.
oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Geometry was my least favorite math. So just pick that, missed that one.
pre-cal is killing me right now.
Yeah, pre-cal is difficult. I agree. But pre-cal is the hardest. Are you a junior or a senior this year?
I'm a junior this year.
So you take calculus next year, right?
I don't know. I'm really split. So I want to graduate early. I want to graduate in December so I can early enroll. So I was going to do an English, a math, and I play football.
Okay.
I was going to do 3 classes and then graduate and then either go to college or get a job or something.
Okay. Are you wanting to play football in college? Is that what you kind of?
It really depends. I mean, it depends on where. Like University of Penn sent me a thing that said that they wanted me to come play for. Looked at me and wanted me to fill out applications for that, but it really, and I want to be a lawyer, so that'd be a great school to go to.
Penn's awesome, definitely.
But I don't know. So I just tore my labrum and I'm in a sling, and I'm really kind of tired of. Yeah, I was in a boot all season. I'm really tired of getting like hurt and stuff. So I'm on the fence on if I want to play college or not.
Yeah. So UPenn is pretty difficult to get into. What would happen if you like went to UPenn and then we're like, oh, like football's not for me? Like, could you just stay at UPenn?
So Ivy League, right? Yeah, Ivy League. They don't give college like athletic scholarship to get like sponsors, which which is basically a
scholarship.
Like a scholarship, but it's mostly you have to have the academics and then they'll let you in.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I got to get this up if I do want to go there.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, UPenn's pretty awesome. That being said.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to do the second passage and see how you did that one? Again, another 9 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Good. Perfect. Before we start, how do you usually do this? Do you read like really into the passage? Do you only read the parts that are highlighted or underlined?
I read the passage and then I stop at every question. So I'll read until the underline and I'll finish and I'll stop the underline. Then I'll read the question. Okay. Then I'll reread the underlined portion to figure out which looks the best.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So your timing was good. So whichever way you're doing it, that's fine. But okay, I was just curious. So you can do the second passage starting now. You have about 5.5 minutes left. You have about a minute left.
Okay, I'm done.
Awesome. How'd you feel about this one?
Not as good.
Not as good. Okay, it's fine. So what did you get for 16? Sorry, you're muted.
I got F.
Awesome. Okay. So I have a little trick for this one as well. So you'll usually encounter either yes or no, kept or deleted, or something like that questions, both in the science section and in the English section. So my trick is that often, like both choices, like kept or deleted, will have a correct statement afterwards, right? So that was your timer. So what I do is I first answer what I think is right, kept or deleted, and then like stick with that answer and then just cross out the other two, right? So let's say you chose kept, right? Which you did. So you'd cross out deleted, right? Because deleted will have parts that are true, like I'm saying, so it'll kind of confuse you. But in this case, then you would just choose between the two kept options.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, what about
Harder.
C?
I got B.
Perfect. Great job. So you did good at seeing that this emphasizes. So that was the key here, right? What about number 18?
I got J.
Yep, that's right. Any questions on this one? You sounded a little bit.
I didn't have any questions. It was either that one, but I saw the
comment at the end.
comment, and I didn't think that it was too independent.
Yeah. Let's see the symptoms. Actually, though, the law requires fair and equal treatment in all education areas, which are including admissions, including admissions, scholarships, housing. Yeah, great job. That was kind of a difficult one, honestly. Okay, let's move on. What about 19? How did you do on 19?
I got C.
Yeah, perfect. Great job. Okay. What about?
I got J for 20.
Yep, great job. What about 21?
I got I put delete the underlined portion.
Okay, let's look at 21. So 21 tells us at the time, none of the schools that she applied accepted women. So we have at the time, none of the schools she applied accepted women. So it wouldn't necessarily be delete because we can kind of tell that there's missing something there, right? None of the schools she applied. If it was none of the schools she applied to accepted women, that would be okay. But in this case, the right answer was actually B.
Yeah, that's the one. That was my second option.
Yeah, to which she applied. Woman. We knew it wouldn't be while, right? While she applied. At the time, none of the schools while she applied. So that would leave us with A, no change, B, to which, and D, delete the underlined portion. So if we were to delete the underlined portion, what I kind of do is I just pretend to take that word out and read the sentence. At the time, none of the schools she applied accepted women. So we can tell that there's something missing there for this sentence to make kind of sense. So it wouldn't be delete the underlined portion. And then I'd read it with no change. At the time, none of the schools that she applied accepted women. So again, we're missing two. But at the time, none of the schools to which she applied accepted women. That one is grammatically correct. Okay. What about number 22?
I put H.
Yeah, great job. A disappointed mink vowed to spend her life opposing discrimination. Okay. What about 23?
All of these for me sounded grammatically correct when I like substituted them in. I sat on this one for like a minute.
Okay. So
I put B, but I don't feel like that's right.
Okay, so let's look at this one a little bit more closely. So in 1965, she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to the US Congress when she won the first of 6 consecutive elections. Okay, so we know Congress, after winning the first of 6 consecutive elections, Congress winning the first 6 consecutive elections, Congress as a result of winning, and Congress she won. So yeah, this is kind of a weird sentence, right? So I agree that this was a difficult question. So first we need to see which one would not be acceptable. So this one's extra hard because we have to figure out all the ones that are acceptable, right? Okay, so 23 was actually A.
Okay.
But let's look at all these other options. So Congress after winning the first of 6 elections. She became the first Asian American woman to be elected to US. Oh, I see the issue here. Okay. So this period at the end kind of confused me a little bit.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
You get what I'm saying? Because it's like US period instead of saying she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to the US.
Yeah. I thought that was U.S. like United States. And they,
Yeah. So it's not a period, like you said, it's the United States.
yeah.
To me, for some reason, I saw it as a period. So this sentence definitely needs a comma somewhere, right? Because she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to the US Congress when she won the first of 6 consecutive elections. So she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to the US Congress after winning the first of 6 consecutive elections. So B in this case makes sense to me, because it's after.
Yeah.
So after winning the 6 of consecutive elections. She became the first Asian American woman to be elected to US Congress, winning the first of 6 consecutive elections. So that again, it's makes grammatically correct sense to me, right? Because we're separating, we know that she became the first Asian American woman to be elected, and she won the first of 6 consecutive elections. And Congress as a result of winning the first of 6 consecutive elections. So to me, the ones that make the most sense, B and D, pretty much say the same thing, after winning as a result of winning. So no, it can't be either of those. So that leaves us with A or C. So the difference between A and C is we have the comma in the same spot, but she won the first of 6 consecutive elections. Those two are complete thoughts, right? She won the first of 6 consecutive elections, and she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to the US Congress. Therefore, we need something like a conjunction in that case. Something like because she won the first of 6 consecutive elections, or something of that sort, separating those two complete thoughts. So for that reason, it would be A. Any questions? Did that make a little more sense?
That made a lot more sense. I kind of got stuck. And I was like, okay, I'm wasting too much time.
Yeah,
I just need to pick one.
Yeah, but you did the right thing. If you're spending over a minute on a question, pick what you think is right and move on. I'd rather you finish this whole test and get, like, let's say question 75 was like super easy, right? If you were like short on time, like you might just have to like not even look at 75, just like put an answer down, right? Yeah. So it'd be better for you to get that one than to spend like 5 to 10 minutes looking at this one, potentially most likely getting it wrong and then not even get it to 75, right? We missed 2 in that case. Okay. Yeah. What about 24? What did you put for 24?
I put no change because I felt like after it happened, the semicolon, it was kind of like it like described it.
In addition, okay, so the case here, the difficulty here is that we have first an introductory phase, then in addition to Title IX, and then Mink introduced, right? So for example, and in addition to Title IX can be taken out in this sentence, right? Because one, this one's an introductory phase, and 2, this is separated by 2 commas, right? So the sentence really starts after that. So Mink introduced the Early Childhood Education Act and supported the women's educational equity. So
it'd be a comma, right?
For 24. So yeah, it's actually nothing.
Nothing.
Okay. So first, I'm going to show you another little quick trick. So comma in this thing mean almost the same thing, kind of like the semicolon and period, right? The only reason where you would use, like, let's say this one instead of a comma is when something is introduced with a dash at first. So let's say we had something like XXX dash and then XXX, right? And then that's when you put the dash again. So these two, like commas in these little lines, sort of mean the same thing, right? So the only time where you would choose one over the other is if there was an introductory dash, right? And the part underlined was this, then at the end, we'd also need a dash. But in this case, since it's only one dash, we could substitute them, right? So if it was a comma, it would also be a dash. Does that make sense, or is that confusing?
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So that would erase H and J. So that leaves us with F, no change, and G, introduced. But like I said, if we were to take this out, the key here was that the colon would be used to introduce a list or a complete thought and something to be like synonymous or descriptive, right? But the issue here is that we have two verbs, right? Supported and introduced. So for that reason, you can't really make a list or have something descriptive with a verb, right? So it wouldn't be no change. In this case, we would just say, Mick introduced the Early Childhood Education Act and supported the women's educational equity. And that would be a perfectly good sentence. But it was difficult to kind of take both of these things out and see that the sentence started right here.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. What about 25? What did you get for 25?
C.
Okay, so let's look at 25 as well. So which of the following alternatives to the underlined portion would not be accepted? Okay, did you cross anything out?
Changed and revised.
Okay, awesome. So you were left with A and C. Okay, so let's see. All three were landmark laws because they substantially altered civil rights, altered civil rights policies. Oh, I see how this one would be really confusing. So let's not forget that the thing that we have to change here is not, which would not fit. So what does amended mean to you? Like, what do you think of when you read it?
How do I put this?
What is to amend?
To like blanking. I'm the person that just took government and government like 3 weeks ago.
So it makes you think of amendments, right?
Yeah, like the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of going through the right path, but amendments have to be amended, right? So like,
yeah.
Like I can't remember the amendments off the top of my head right now, but like there was a couple that they take off, there's a couple that they add, you know? So it's like a running list of like the supreme laws of the country. So amend in the same, I kind of think of it also as like, let's say that you got in a fight with like your best friend, right? If you were to apologize, you would also amend. So in a way, it's kind of like it's very similar to revise or change, right? To change for the better is really what I would say amended means. Well, differed, what does differed mean to you?
Like disagreed is what I would think.
Yeah, disagree or dismiss. So altered, and like you said, is like change or revise. And amended also means kind of the same thing, to like change for the better. But differ is like to ignore or to like, what was the word you used for differ? That was a good word as well.
Changed.
Yeah. So not necessarily changed, but it'd be like to be like like, oh, like if someone was, let me think of an example for differed. It's kind of to like ignore or like to defer. Like if you were to like not accept your chance at UPenn because you didn't want to play football, you'd kind of like defer, right? So you'd be deferring it. So you'd be like dismissing it, right? So in this case, we wouldn't really dismiss the civil rights policies, but we would revise them, we would change them, and we would amend them, like make them better, basically. But we wouldn't like just dismiss. So for that, it would be deferred. Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. What about 26? What did you get for 26?
I couldn't figure out which sentence it was talking about.
Okay, so
3, but like.
So one trick that I have is that you see paragraph 3.
Yeah.
We start and we see, okay, this is a 1, this is a 2, this is a 3. I start seeing these little numbers. So while I'm reading that paragraph, I know that I'm either going to have to switch the order of a sentence, remove a sentence, or modify a sentence, right? So while I'm reading, I'm thinking, okay, which one of these does not fit? Or which one of these would not fit, right? Or which one of these look like they're not in the right order? Because usually there's a question coming up at the end of that paragraph that asks you to do something with the order of the sentences, deleting a sentence, or like reorganizing them in some way. So this says, for the sake of logic and coherence, of this paragraph, sentence 3 should be placed blank. So sentence 3 is this one, right? So let's see what sentence 3 says. Mink used her position in Congress to fight for the rights of immigrants, ethnic minorities, women, and children. So let's kind of just read the paragraph together to kind of get a sense of what's going on. So after graduation, Mink and her husband moved to Honolulu, where she started her own law firm. Increasingly interested in politics, Mink ran for federal office. Mink used her position in Congress to fight for the rights of women, immigrants, and ethnic minorities, women and children. In 1965, she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to US Congress when she won the first of 6 consecutive elections. Okay. For example, in addition to Title IX, Mink introduced the Early Childhood Education Act and supported the women's educational equity. So I can already tell reading here, all 3 landmark laws became, because they substantially altered civil rights policies. So to me, do you think sentence 3 fits here? Where it is?
No, I was thinking like after sentence 4.
Yeah.
Because then she got elected and then she used the position in Congress to fight for the rights.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing is for examples here, right? So this for example was a big clue to me, because now we're saying, okay, for example 1 isn't underlined, so we know that it's grammatically correct and it's part of the paragraph, right? But the sentence preceding it doesn't have anything to show examples for, In 1965, she became the first Asian American woman to be elected to the US Congress when she won the first of 6 consecutive elections. For example, it doesn't tell us about elections. It tells us about like things she introduced. So for that reason, we'd be right after sentence 4. Okay. What about 27?
27, I put C.
Yeah, awesome. Great job. So why did you choose C? You were not too sure about that one, as I can tell. Did you class for 27?
Oh,
were you pretty confident on that one? Is that
I was just trying to figure out where I was.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Because you were like, I got C, so I just wanted to make sure that you understand.
I put F for 28 because that's the only one that makes sense.
Okay, so we're having some issues with these, right? Would not be acceptable. We see it here, we saw it here, we saw it here, and we saw it on the past one. And I think that, these are definitely a little bit more difficult than the other ones, because you have to choose all the ones that fit and choose the one that doesn't fit instead of choosing the one that fits, right?
Oh, it'd be J.
Yeah, it would be J. So why do you think it would be J?
Because to accept equality, and it's not really her to like accept, she's trying to get it, but she's not the person that's like accepting the equality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like to advocate is like to promote it, right? To support it, endorse it. So I would quickly cross those 2 out.
Yeah, that's what I did.
The one that's a little bit confusing is champion, right? Voice to champion equality for all citizens. So champion to me is like, the champion, but it also means to fight for, to advocate in this case. So it would be accept. They usually throw one word in that's really difficult or confusing. So what I do is I look at the 2, like I said, I cross out the ones that I know fit, and that leaves me with 2, right? So in this case, it was amended. And I say, okay, this word, I'm not entirely sure what it means, okay? Or how it can be used in this case. But what about this one, accept? So I look at this, and if I see, because we both know what accept means, if I see that it doesn't really fit, I pick that one. If I see that it fits, I pick the other one. So it's just kind of narrowing it down to 2, and these would not be acceptable, and seeing, okay, there's going to be one word that's definitely harder than the rest, and the other word I should sort of know. So does the word I sort of know fit? If it does, great, it's the other one. If it doesn't, then pick the one you don't know, right? But don't just always pick the one you don't know, because you don't know it. So it's like, oh, this might be it, right? That's just kind of my thought on this one. Okay, what about 29? How'd you do on 29?
I put D.
Yeah, great job. Okay, what about 30? First, tell me, did you choose yes or no?
I chose no.
Great job. Did you read the yeses?
I did.
Okay, you still got the right answer, so it's working for you. So you can just continue doing that. Sometimes for me, it just got a little confusing.
I
but
put H.
yeah, that's right. Okay. So this one was a little bit more difficult for you.
Yeah.
But it had a lot of the ones that I see you struggle with, not acceptable.
Yeah.
So now that we've recognized that you struggle with this, maybe pay a little more attention to your answer on this. Say, okay, this is kind of an area I'm weaker in. This is a question that says not. I'm going to spend a couple more seconds on this one to make sure that's the answer choice I want. Because you were quickly to understand 28, kind of whenever we looked at it more closely, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have passage 3. So we're going to continue doing that. We'll probably do this one and maybe one more, and then do a couple math problems so you can get some things. Sound good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you got 9 minutes, and I'll let you know at around like 5 minutes in a minute. So
Yes, sir.
you can start there. You have about 5 minutes left. You're about a minute and a half left.
I'm done.
Awesome. Great job. How'd you feel about this one? Andrew?
Yeah, I've been talking this whole time. I realized I was muted.
No worries.
I feel a lot better about this one. There's one or two, but other than that,
Are there any of the not acceptable ones or not really?
um, 43 got me,
Okay.
and
Yeah, that's similar to the least acceptable.
36, but I feel like I got 36 right.
Okay. Let's get started. So what'd you put for 31?
I put D.
Great job. What about 32?
I put J.
Okay, so 32 was actually G, but let's look at this one. When you put J, I was about to say I'm really proud of you because I thought it was J as well.
Because you said, like, I remember like the
guilty converted.
the guilty, and then
The theremin, the first electronic musical instrument. Okay, so
sorry.
no worries. Invented in 1919 by Russian physicist Leon Theremin. Okay, so in this case, the comma and this thing would be the same, right? Oh, there's a timer, sorry. So it leaves us with G and J. So let me look at this one a little bit. Let's see. So the theremin, make sure I didn't give you that. The theremin, invented in 1918 by Russian physicist Leon Theremin. Yeah, so there's not really a complete thought. We're still missing who the Russian physicist and it wasn't like the theremin was invented by a Russian physicist, and then that's when you would use like the semicolon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it'd be more of a complete thought. In this case, Leon Theremin is relevant to our sentence, and it's not really completed, because if we would read it, we'd read the theremin invented in 1918 by Russian physicist. So it's not like by a Russian physicist. Does that make sense? So if it was a Russian physicist, that's when you could use the semicolon or you could also use the dash in that case. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What about 33? What did you get for 33?
I got C.
What about 34?
I got I just got G.
Yep. Do you have any questions on that one? No, you could.
No, I don't have any questions. That one was pretty simple.
Okay, so 34, I have another little trick. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll give you really long answers, and like a major film featured the theremin, right? The film that featured the theremin that, and in that case, 9 to 8 out of 10 times, the shortest answer is the right one as well. So that's another one. So 8 out of 9 times, 8 to 9 out of 10 times, the shortest answer, or the one with the least commas, is the right one, and 8 out of 9 times, the shortest like wordy answer is the right one. Because they'll just put like redundant information,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
What about 35?
I put D.
Okay, so this is one of the ones where my trick doesn't work. So let's see what the issue is here, right? So the theremin is remarkable because, unlike most traditional musical instruments, it does not have any keys, strings,
Oh,
or
key.
valves.
I read it key strings or value or valves. I didn't keys, strings, or so it'd be B.
Yeah, exactly, because it's a list.
Yeah. I read it as key strings.
Yeah, that's fair. What about 36? What'd you get for 36?
I got F.
Okay, great job. And this is one of the not acceptable ones.
Yeah.
Do you have any trouble with this one, or what did you cross out?
I crossed out G and J off.
Okay, sorry. G and J. So you're between H and F. So why did you choose F?
Because which one vertical antenna on the top didn't really sound grammatically correct.
Yeah, with 2 antenna, 1 vertical antenna on the top, another antenna. Yeah, there's something missing there, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, we need a comma, which makes some sense. Instead, it consists of a box with 2 antenna. Period. It has 1 vertical antenna. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The colon also makes sense. So at least the comma or the non-comma, and we know we're missing something, so the non-comma would not be accepted. Great job. Okay. What about 37?
I got C.
Yeah, great job. Any questions on that one?
No, sir.
What about 38?
I put no change.
Okay, so let's look at 38. So the resulting change in the frequency of the waves produce a theremin's characteristic sound. Okay, so what is produce? What is produce? Is it a verb? Is it a noun? Is it adjective? Adverb? What do you think?
I don't know.
Okay, so it's a verb.
Is it okay?
So is it the resulting change in the frequency of the waves? So you said F, no change, right? And this is 38. Let me just make sure I get the right one. So it's actually produces.
Okay.
produces a theremin's characteristic sound. Okay, let me slow this one down. So the right answer is produces. So the resulting change in the frequency of the waves produces a theremin's characteristic sound. Okay, so the subject here is the resulting change in the frequency of the waves. So the resulting change in the frequency, right, of the waves is a prepositional phrase. So it's described in the frequency. So since it's frequency and it's a verb, it's a singular verb, it's a singular noun. So it has to be a S at the end of produce, making it produces.
Okay.
Does that help a little bit? Any other
Yeah.
questions? Okay. What about 39? What do you get for 39?
I put C.
Yeah.
But
What were you saying?
I put C, but I was split between C and B, but I thought like Thurman's was like singular. Like it was like a one thing and it wasn't multiple.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's a one thing, we put the apostrophe right where you put it. Great job. Okay. What about 40? This is another least acceptable. So let's see how you
I put H.
Yeah, great job. Did you cross any out just to start off with?
I crossed out G and J and F. Like I got that one as soon as I read it.
Okay, great job. Perfect. What about 41?
I put no change.
Okay, let's look at 41. So they can also raise the volume of the sound by moving their hands away from the loop-shaped antenna and lowering the volume by moving them closer. They can also raise the volume and lower the volume by moving them closer. They can also raise the volume of the sound by moving their hands away from the loop-shaped antenna and lower. Okay, I think this one is wrong on the answer key because it's saying it's lower. What are your thoughts on that?
Lower doesn't make sense because it's moving their hands away from the shape channel and lowering.
Yeah, I agree. It would also be the parallel, like moving, lowering.
Yeah.
So I think that was just wrong on the answer because I agree with you completely. Okay, so we'll take that X off. I'll look at it a little bit more closely while you're doing the other one to see if I can find a reason for it not. But I think you're right on that. Okay. What about 42?
I put J.
Awesome. And did you read both the yes and the no?
I did read the yes and the no because I just wanted to see what they said and if it made sense. And when it didn't make sense, I was like, okay, yeah, no, it's no. Okay,
so don't worry about my strategy. Out of the 3 or 4 that we've done of these, you got them right every time. So just do what you keep, what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about 43?
I put A.
Yep. Great job. Do you want to go over this one?
I marked out B and C off rip.
Yeah.
And then
those are 2 hard words though, vigorous and unerring.
Yeah.
So let's see the word that we're trying to change. It's precise, right? The musician's hand movements must be vigorous in order to manipulate the sound. So what does vigorous sound like to you?
I don't know. It sounds aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. And unerring sounds more not that aggressive, right? So vigorous, doesn't sound like precise, right? It almost sounds like the opposite to me.
Yeah.
So great job. Okay. What about 44?
I put as a result. I put G.
Yeah, great job. And 45?
I put B.
Okay, so 45 was actually A, no change. So let's look at this one.
Okay.
So in contrast, so we can take that out. The theremin is difficult to learn and demanding to play. So if we were to substitute this with a period, would this be a complete thought before it? The theremin is difficult to learn, okay? And then next it says, however, comma, theremin enthusiasts still practice the instrument today and even build their own version of it. So you said B, which was right. So you crossed out C and D, I assume, because there wasn't a comma after however. So you're between A and B. So the trick here was just recognizing that both the thing before and the thing afterwards were complete thoughts. So you'd need you need the semicolon there or a period. That make a little more sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So you did pretty good on this one, honestly. Great job. You got a lot of the ones that were least acceptable or not acceptable. You got them all right, which is good. You're seeing your mistakes. Here we had commas, right? So this was commas. This was verb tense. This one was semicolons. So yeah, just random little things to kind of pay attention to.
Yeah.
We're gonna start picking up as we go on. Okay, let's do one more passage, and then we'll just do a couple math problems. I'm probably just gonna look through the math section when we get there and see things that I think like there's a couple of things that teachers don't teach very well, like matrix addition or multiplication or like exponent rules and stuff like that we can just cover really quickly that I would consider high yield. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Passage
4.
Yeah.
So far you're at about like 8 or 9 missed. So you're doing pretty good. Okay, so you got 9 minutes and you can start now.
Alrighty.
We have about 4 minutes left. We have about 2 minutes left. All right, this time, how are you doing, Andrew?
I have one more question left.
Yeah, just take your time, finish that one. You were pretty good on time in all the other sections, so you definitely had time left over for a more difficult one.
This one was tough.
Yeah, it was a tough passage, right? Radiocarbon dating tree rings and distant past. It's kind of difficult to understand, I feel like.
This one was a little rough. I did not do good on this one.
Okay, let's just go then. What did you get for 46?
I got J.
Yeah, perfect. Least amount of words. Everything else is kind of redundant. Okay, what about 47?
I got B.
Perfect. Any questions on that one?
No, sir.
Okay, 48.
I got H, and I crossed out F and G.
Yeah, great job. See how that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, what about 49?
I got C.
Okay, let's look at 49. So however, questions were arisen, so that already looks bad to me, right? So I can take off no change. At the same time about the method's accuracy. So questions. So what did you say you had?
I had C.
Okay. Did you cross anything else out apart from it?
I crossed out B.
Yeah, so you're between arose and arised. Questions arise at the time about the method's accuracy, or questions arose at the time about the method's accuracy? What sounds more?
Rose.
Yeah, it was D. Whenever in between two, I always like to just like put that word in the sentence and see which one I like more. Okay, what about 50?
I put no change.
Yeah, great job. Okay, what about 51?
I put no change again.
Yeah, don't be scared of the no change, especially if they're one after another. They usually do like one or two of those a test. Okay, what about 53?
I put H.
Okay, so let's see what this says. Even though Libby won the Nobel Prize in 1960, experts realizing they needed another method to corroborate Libby's findings. So is experts realizing important for the sentence?
Yes.
Okay, so that crosses out H and F. So now we're between realized and realized. So what gives us a clue onto whether it's realizing or realized?
Realized it's in the past. It was in 1960.
Yeah, and then you also get the need, right? They need.
Yeah.
Okay, what about 53?
I got C.
Yeah, great job. Yeah, let's look at this one because you weren't too sure. They turned to a much older dating method. Dendrochronology, the use of tree rings for mapping intervals of time, right? So they turned to a much older dating method. Like I said, it's a complete thought. This is the one of like the verdict, right? Dendrochronology, the use of tree rings for mapping intervals of time. Okay, great job. That one was a difficult one. What about 54?
I put J.
Yeah, it was J. So who's on this one?
Do it.
Any questions on this one?
Oh no, I don't have any questions on this one.
Okay. What about 55?
I put C.
Okay, let's see. Let's get this one a little more close. When plotted on a graph called a calibration curve, these data with calendar dates provided a method for correlating radiocarbon dates, right? So you said you put C.
Yes.
So the right answer here was actually D.
Oh.
That one's a little bit weird because they both use dates, right? So let's kind of break it down. When plotted on a graph called a calibration curve, these data provided a method for correlating radiocarbon dates with calendar dates. Oh, okay, that makes sense, right? So we're correlating radiocarbon dates with something, but if we just leave it with nothing, we need something else that it's correlating with, right? Making the right answer. Like, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
What about 56?
I put H, but I was really confused.
Yeah, this is a hard one, definitely. So the trick here is, okay, so were there any that you crossed out?
No.
Okay, so here again, we have the trick. Okay, so here's a period and they provided, or they proved, and a semicolon and they proved, right? So these two would be pretty much the same thing, right? So we
Okay.
can cross both of those out. So that leaves us with H and J, right? So that's number 56.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at the sentence, right? So the radiocarbon dates now verified as accurate overturn conventional thinking in archaeology and prove that dating methods based on Egyptian records were inaccurate. So and prove would make sense in this case, but it's asking you which one would not. So is proving that dating methods based on Egyptian records were inaccurate? Is that a complete sentence?
Yes. So it'd be, yeah. So it'd be J
Yeah,
because it said not.
yeah, exactly. Because if this
Am I-
comma would need a conjunction in order to combine them. Because it's not a complete clause.
Yeah.
Okay. What about 57?
I got A
Okay, so you were close. So you said not C or D. Why did you choose A over B?
because I thought it led to, because it started talking about Egyptian and Greek. And I thought it was it led to Egyptian dating methods. But I don't know.
Okay, let's look at this one. So the writer is considering deleting the phrase based on Egyptian records from the preceding sentence. Should the phrase be kept or deleted? So the radiocarbon dates now verified as accurate, overturn conventional thinking in archaeology, and prove that dating methods based on Egyptian records were inaccurate. Some stone monuments in Europe, for example, were found to be 800 years older than Egyptian and Greek structures that had supposedly inspired them. So what is Egyptian records were inaccurate given to the sentence? It's kind of like clarifying which dating methods, right? Because if we were to delete it, then we wouldn't necessarily know which dating methods we were talking about.
Yeah.
We kind of infer that maybe it would be Egyptian just because it kind of talks about it later on, but it wouldn't be necessarily clear. So for that reason, it would be.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's look at the next one. What about 58? What did you get for 58?
I got J.
Yeah. What about 59?
I got D.
You said D or B?
D. D is
Okay.
in dog.
Let's look at this one. So given that all the choices are true, which one most effectively concludes the paragraph and essay? Right? These findings led to the establishment of different facts and things about many places such as Stone Age and the stone temples of Malta. So what was this kind of, if you could summarize this passage for me, what would you say it was about?
Different like dating like systems.
Yeah, like calendars almost, right?
Yeah.
So use of Livy's methods to develop new timelines and hypotheses about distant past. So we don't really know too much about timelines of the distant past. Confirmation of dates of prehistoric monuments across the world. Not necessarily, right? And we're also trying to, these findings led to confirmation of dates and prehistoric monuments across the world. We can't really confirm those dates, right? So that leaves us between A and D. Wait a second. I messed up. Let me think about this one again. Okay, so given that all the choices are true, which one most effectively concludes the paragraph and the essay? So the answer in here was actually B, use of Livy's methods to develop new timelines and hypotheses about the distant past. And the reason was because if we look at the passage, it kind of talks about radiocarbon dating developed by William F. Livy, kind of gives us a thought on radiocarbon dating. He won a Nobel Prize. These data provided a method for correlating radiocarbon dates with calendar dates. So the whole the whole passage was kind of about using Livy's new method to develop new timelines or like understand the timeline of things. Does that kind of help? I know I kind of confused you probably at the beginning.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. Once she started laying it back out, I got it.
Okay, what about 60?
I put H.
Yeah, great job. Any questions on that one?
No, I didn't have any questions.
Okay, perfect. So that leaves us about 17-ish minutes to do some math. Okay, so what we'll do is I'm gonna give you about 10 or so, or 7 or so minutes to do 1 through 10 to kind of just get you in a mind of math. And these should be the easiest ones. So I'm gonna, by checking to see how fast you finish these, I can kind of check how you're timing. So I'll give you 7 minutes, which is kind of pushing it a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you need more time, they'll be fine. But you should be at about finishing these in about 7 to 8 minutes. The first time. So, okay, so we'll do that. We'll go over those, and then I'll look for concepts while you're doing those that I think are relevant.
Ready.
Okay, so you get 7 minutes to do 1 through 10, starting now.
I'm done.
That was 33 seconds ahead. So you're right on time. How did you feel about these?
I felt pretty good. There's the triangle one, number 4, really got me. But other than that, I thought the rest of them right.
Since we don't have much time, if you got the answer right, we'll just keep moving forward. But if you got it wrong, like I'll work through it because I found a couple that would be really useful. Okay, so let's look at number 1. What'd you get for number 1?
I got A.
What about 2?
I got K.
Yep. 3.
B.
B or D? What'd you say?
B.
Okay, so let's go over this one. So 4B8 times 5B3. So when you multiply exponents, what do you do to the exponents?
You add the exponents together.
Yeah, so 8 plus 3 is 11, right? And
4 times 5 is 20.
so 20. But what happens? What did you say 3 was? Yeah, so you said you got D,
I got B.
B as in boy.
Yeah, B as in boy.
Okay, yeah, so 4 times 5 is 20, right? So we get 20B11.
Yeah.
Okay.
I crossed everyone out except B and D.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, so you only add the exponents, you still multiply the regular numbers. Okay, what about 4? What'd you get for 4?
I had no idea, so I just put G.
Okay, so think about this. What is the total angle? All the angles in a triangle should equal what number? You know?
3. I know this.
So that was the key here. So they should equal 180.
180. Yep.
A triangle equals 180. What about a square or a quadrilateral? It's a better word.
Square quarter. It's not 360, is it?
Yeah, it's 360. Just
Okay.
okay. So if we have 180, we can do 40 minus 180 gives us 140. 140 minus 105 gives us 35, right? So now we know that this angle side is 35. What about a line? What do you think the angle measure of a line should be?
180.
Yeah, so it's 180 minus 35. 145.
145. So it was K.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, perfect.
I had geometry, I just never had it.
Yeah, that's understandable. Okay, what about number 5? What'd you get?
I got D.
Great. What about 6?
G.
Yes. 7?
E.
8.
G.
Awesome. 9.
E.
Great. And 10?
H.
Good job. Okay. So let me pull up my page here. Sorry, I have to look up the problem steps.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with number 30. You want to turn to page where 30 is. Okay, so let's look at 30. So what are you thinking when you look at this one?
30. Isn't that
So how would you work this one if you were given 30? Would you distribute that out and then have to distribute all the others out?
I would distribute it to first to see what I'm looking at.
So yeah, that was my first thought at first, and that's the reason I kind of wanted to give you this one, is because if we were to distribute this out and then distribute F, G, H, J, and K, that would take us like 6 or 7 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Just to be sure. So what it's saying is which one of these is equivalent to 2x minus 3 and negative x minus 7. So what I thought about was like, okay, I looked at the answer choices, and this one just changed this negative to a plus sign and both of these, right? But I realized that K had switched all of them. So it had +2 to -3, -3 to +3,
negative x to x and negative 7 to positive 7. So that would be the one that's equivalent.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I saw that one, first one that like I looked at. I'm like, well, all those are flipped.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What about 33? What do you think about 33?
33. 5 less than the product of 4 and a number n is greater than 28. I think it is E.
Yeah, exactly. Not bad, right? Just wanted to see. That one can be a little confusing sometimes. This is what I had.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to 40. So what do you think about 40? I threw a rectangle at.
Okay. I
So
have
what-
no idea.
Okay, so the key here is that this is an equilateral triangle. What does that mean to you? Might not mean anything,
That all the sides are equal.
right? So if all the sides are equal, what we can do is we can say 3x plus 1 equals x plus 7, right?
Yeah.
Solve. So I'd take an x, so we can say 2x equals 6. So I just subtracted this x, subtracted this 1, and we get x is equal to 3, right? But
Yeah.
now we also have to figure out what one side is equal to. So x plus 7 gives us 10, right?
Yeah.
So now we can use this equation to figure out k, right? Because we can do 3 squared plus k equals 10. So
Yeah.
that's 9. So k is equal to
1. My fault.
no worries. G. Awesome. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moving forward, we have 46. Do you see 46? Okay, so this one sucks, not because it's difficult, just because you have to do a system of equations, right? So you have 3x, I always mess these up, so I might mess this one up, but 3x plus 5y equals 17, right?
Yes.
2x plus 3y equals 11, right?
Is this where you set both of them like you'll set both of them like 6?
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd have to cancel them out because you have two unknowns, right?
But you have to make one of them negative, right? You'd have to make one negative 6 and one positive.
Yeah, so I would do this one is like multiply this by 2, right? So I get 6x plus 10y equals 34, right?
Yeah.
And multiply this one by negative 3. So that would give me
Negative 6.
yeah, negative 6x
Negative
plus
9.
or minus 18y. Oh no, minus 9y.
9.
Yeah, I was thinking the 6, 9y
Yeah.
equals negative 33, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pass this out, gives us 1y equals 1, right? So now we can plug it in. So 3x plus 5 equals 17, right? So minus 5 gives us 12. So x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 1. So 4 plus 1 gives us 5.
Yeah.
Not too bad, right? Just wanted to make sure that you're comfortable with those. You see those pretty often. And lastly, I wanted to work 51. Okay, so what do you think about 51? If number represents the operation defined by a number or hashtag b equals a plus b of a, then 1 to the hashtag of 2 in parentheses to the hashtag of 3.
No idea.
Looks scary, right? But it's really not that bad, right? So we're saying a plus b to the power of a, right? So a in this case is 1 and b is 2, right? So we can say 1 plus 2 to the power of a, which in this case is 1. So 2 to the 1 is what?
What?
What is 2 to the first power? 2 raised to the
It's just 2. Right?
Okay, so for some reason, I'm thinking 0, but you might be right. Let me just.
You
Two.
probably are right.
Yeah, so no, you're right, it's 2. So 2 to the 0 is 1. Yeah, everything to the 0 is 1. Okay, so that's just 1. So 1 plus 2 gives us 3. Right?
Yeah.
Now we have 3 plus b, in this case is 3 to the 3rd. Wait, so what's 3 to the 3rd?
9.
3 to the 2nd is 9.
Oh, 9. 27.
Yeah, 27 plus 3 is
30.
So don't be scared of ones like that. You can do it. Just make sure you get it like systematically. Okay?
Yes. Yes,
Any
sir.
questions before we finish?
No, sir. I don't have any questions.
All right. Well, you did pretty good. I think you have really good potential in all these sections. So just keep working until April. And good luck with your football at UPenn. That sounds pretty awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Well, have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, you too.